When we think of the mass media are those channels of communication that are available to wide segments of the population, including radio, television, movies, magazines, newspapers, and even the internet, which strongly shapes public attitudes and beliefs. Think about how the mass media affects you daily. Think about the different television shows you might watch, or even the way that you watch television shows, because now some people binge watch those television shows. You can find the mass media everywhere. One of the things with the mass media is that we see this aspect of pop culture. Pop culture refers to beliefs, practices, and objects that are part of everyday traditions. This includes mass-produced, mass-marketed media that are shaped by large audiences. Pop culture is distinct from elite culture or high culture, which is shared by only a select group who can afford to participate in it. Typically those who are part of like the upper elites, they're the ones that participate in what we would consider high culture or elite culture. Popular culture is supported by patterns of mass consumption. Thus, cultural tastes and participation in the arts are socially structured. You have some people that get their culture from visiting the theater, which can cost hundreds of dollars to attend. And when I mean like the theater, I'm talking about seeing shows like Hamilton or seeing shows on Broadway, that type of thing. While other people, ordinary people, get their cultural experiences from TV, movies, and the internet. The distinction between popular culture and elite culture means that various segments of the population consume culture in different ways. This is affected by patterns of social class, race, ethnicity, and gender in society. Okay. Now, looking at the digital divide, this is the persistent inequality in people's access to electronic information. This inequality has led to many to advocate for free wireless services in some cities. So the digital divide is the idea of whether or not you have access basically to the internet. That's basically what it is, whether or not you have access to the internet. We may think that everyone has access to the internet, but this is not the case. There are some communities where you don't have access to the internet because for some reason it may cost too much. Maybe the internet, or they don't have the connections out to where it's located. For example, there are places in the deep south where because of the location or because people live there, they're from a lower socioeconomic class. Having access to electronic communication or the internet is probably the furthest thing from their mind because of the cost. And I know one of the things I've heard, or I had like a discussion before with someone, was the idea that, oh, well, you can always go to the library to access the internet, or go to different like fast food places that may have it for free. Well, in these smaller towns, their library may not even have the latest technology, may not even have access to computers. Their library may be only open certain days of the week because of taxpayer funding for those libraries. And also within these smaller towns, their local fast food industries may not even have access to the internet. So the digital divide means that we have groups of people that don't have access to the internet. And one of the issues, one of the problems can be, is the fact that when you are trying to apply for jobs, how do we apply for jobs now? Typically, it's going to be through the internet. Normally, they say fill out an application online. This is our address. If I don't have access to that, think about how behind I may be. If I don't have access to the internet, think about when I'm in school. And sometimes schools require students to submit their, and this is, I'm talking really about K through 12 or high school or even junior high, require students to submit their assignments online. So they're not turning in information, or to access the material online. And if I don't have access to the internet, once again, that can be a problem. Culture can be seen as a conservative force in society. It tends to be based on tradition and is passed on through generations. Culture is increasingly based on institutions that have economic interest in maintaining the status quo or maintaining the way things are. People are often resistant to cultural change because of familiar ways and established patterns of doing things, and that idea is hard to give up. Some cultures adjust slowly to challenging cultural conditions. This is considered cultural lag. Some parts of culture may change more rapidly than others. So sometimes we can see cultural lag, particularly maybe within an older generation. I would say a perfect example is whenever Mark Zuckerberg was speaking in front of Congress, and the questions that the senators or the Congress people were asking, you could tell that they didn't really know a lot about how Facebook works, how these different social platforms and social media works, just by some of the questions that they were asking. So it was almost like he had to go back and kind of break down that information for them. Culture shock is a feeling of disorientation when someone encounters a new or rapidly changing culture situation. Even moving from one culture environment to another within your own can make a person feel out of place. Think about a time when you have experienced culture shock. Sometimes people always think about, if I go to a new culture or a new nation or country, I experience culture shock because I may not know the language. I may not know how the norms operate there. I may not know how to greet people, that kind of thing. But we can even experience culture shock within our own culture. For example, one of my really good friends, she grew up Catholic and had never attended a Black Southern Baptist church. And so when we went to one, a lady in the church caught the spirit, and my friend grabbed my arm, and she's African American also. She grabbed my arm and she was like, "Oh my God, what is happening?" She got really nervous. She didn't say that. She got really nervous, and I said, "It's okay. The lady just kind of caught the spirit." The other thing that happened in the church too was that typically, since she went to Catholic church normally ends about 45 minutes to an hour. That's about how long it normally goes. Well, at this particular time, the church that we went to, I think went on for about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And she kind of looked at me and she was like, when are we going to break so we can get something to eat? And I said, we still probably have about an hour or so left in church. But that was her feeling of not really exactly sure how to kind of operate within this setting. Someone catching the spirit in that setting kind of threw her off, and she was like, well, what's going on? What should happen? And also the fact that there wasn't this kind of call and response that they do within the Catholic Church, or where you go sit up and, where you go on your knees and that type of thing. We don't in the church, the Black Southern Baptist church that we attended, that did not occur. So it was kind of the way of her feeling like, I'm not exactly sure what the rules or the norms are within the church. And so luckily I was there to kind of help guide her in that aspect.